What is an illumination? An illumination is an embellishment or additional decoration that enhances the pages of a written or manuscript page. The term illumination comes from the term illuminate, or to fill with light. This effect is achieved with the application of gold leaf to the letters and images, which reflect light and appear to glow. An illuminated letter was usually the first letter of a page or paragraph. It was always enlarged and in color with gold applied to the areas, while the rest of the text remained black. The images used to enhance the letters included animals, plants, and mythological creatures. These images were modified to fit in or around the letter, or in some cases took on the shape of the letter itself. Because the recording of historical events was such an important task, illuminations were ordered by kings and religious leaders to be added to various pages in order to add interest and importance to their appearance. In the year 1397, do you think they were using a typewriter, or do you think they were doing it all by hand? Think about it. The Egyptians were one of the first cultures known to document events by use of illuminated manuscripts, one of the most famous being the Book of the Dead that dates back to 1310 BC, so 1310 BC, which is before Common Era. So we go back to the year 0, and then it's 1,310 years before that. So a long, long time ago. As written languages developed, various countries adopted the idea of illuminating their manuscripts and carrying on the tradition for hundreds of years into the medieval Europe during the Middle Ages. By the 7th century, illuminations became a highly respected art form. At this time, some of the most beautiful and famous illuminations were now being created in Ireland and England. There were 3 people involved in the creation of illuminations. The first being the Parchmenter, who prepared the drawing and writing surface. Then the scribe, who copied information onto each page. The Illuminator, who actually created the illuminated letters and the other decorations on each page. During the Middle Ages, most of this kind of work was done in monasteries, which meant that monks were doing all of these jobs. The Parchmenter prepared animal skins to be used for writing surfaces. During the early Middle Ages, paper from wood pulp was not available yet. Thus, the use of animal skins as writing surface was typical practice all over the world. The word parchment usually refers to a surface made of sheepskin, while vellum refers to the surface made of calfskin. Both of these were made by stretching the canvas out in the sun and burnishing it with a rounded stone repeatedly to create a smooth surface. The scribe was the person in charge of copying words and stories onto the pages of parchment to be made into a book. Upon receiving the parchment and checking it for flaws, the scribe would then have several tools to prepare before sitting down to write. He would have to sharpen his quill, which is a pen made out of a bird feather. Then he'd have to prepare his inks made from ashes, plant material, and egg whites. It was then that he'd be ready to start writing. And remember, back then they didn't have pencil or eraser, so if he messed up, there was no erasing it. He'd have to start the page all over. The Illuminator. Once all of the texts were in place, the scribe would pass the pages to be done onto the Illuminator, who would begin to add the decorative images we call illuminations. He would first make a rough sketch, then outline that with pen. The gold leaf would then go on first, followed by all the other colors made up from ground up stones and plants. One of the most famous and ornate examples of an illuminated manuscript would be the Book of Kells, and it is housed in Ireland. It's actually in Dublin, Ireland, at Trinity College. So it is considered one of Ireland's finest national treasures and is the chief relic of the Western world. When you look at this book, it is completely ornate. Almost every page looks like the example here, Really, really detailed, very well done. And it was done around the year 800 AD or CE. And so it was done quite a while ago. And originally, we don't know who wrote the book or exactly where it came from. We know it was written either in or near Ireland. And at one point, it had been stolen by Viking raiders and was later put into a leather bag and leather sack and then lost in a bog. A bog is kind of like a swamp, um, but not as warm as the swamps here in America. And it's where this ground gets really tarish, it gets very thick and moist, and things will sink into the ground. And the stuff that makes up a bog is really good at preserving. So when this bog was excavated and they found the bag in there, and the book had been really, really well preserved because of the preservative elements in the bog. So they're able to use it now as an example of early medieval artwork. And this was done, like I said, it's near the beginning of the Middle Ages, and it is an excellent example of an illuminated manuscript. And most of the book is a religious text. It's a copy of the Gospels, which are books of the Bible, and it is a very decorative example of one. So the Book of Kells, if you ever get to go to Ireland, it is an awesome thing to get to go see just for the history standpoint of it and the beautiful artwork that's in it. You cannot touch the book. It is housed in a big glass box where people can't touch it or get the oil from their hands on it because it would start to deteriorate the pages. And so you can see it and you can look at it through the glass box, and they'll turn the page every couple of days so a new page is shown. So this is one of the most popular examples of an illuminated manuscript. The importance of illuminations. Illuminations defined a time in history when the ability to read was sacred and reserved for religious leaders or those born of royal blood, because it took great skill to create such items of beauty, and because these creations were so important. It was a great time in history for artists, for without their skills and talent, such beautiful images would not have ever been created or existed. Have you ever seen illuminated letters anywhere? Think about this question the next time you go to a gift shop or a bookstore. You'll see them a lot as decorative pieces for the cover of books or the start of a chapter on the inside of a book.